Went from condos to Pop's house. On calls, now bus routes.
Let's get to the topic. So, the first topic that we're going to get into today is the Diddy verdict. For the people who don't know, when it comes down to the picture that I just put up there, that's Diddy on his knees after hearing the verdict. You know, there's no cameras or anything like that in the courtroom, so we get pictures, we get visuals. If there were cameras, we would have seen this. But this is the picture of Diddy on his knees after hearing the verdict. So for the people who are not looking at the news, know what's going on, have heard what's going on, or anything like that, the verdict is in. And the verdict is Sean Diddy Combs was found not guilty of racketeering, conspiracy, and sex trafficking charges in his federal trial. However, he was found guilty on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. You know, those are basically the lesser charges that carry potential prison time. You know, so the bigger charges, not guilty. The smaller charges, guilty. Yeah. You know, to be honest with you all, that was basically just what I thought after hearing him watching the trial. You know, to me, the prosecutors, they just didn't prove their case at all. You know, it's funny because about maybe a week ago now, I'm going to say between 4-5 days to a week ago, I was talking to my cousin, you know, Mitch. Shout out to No Money if you watching. But I was talking to my cousin Mitch, and he asked me, what do I think? What do I think is going to happen when it come down to this trial? You know, and I told him straight up, I said, well, rather he's guilty or not, because I'm not the jurors, you know, so I don't know. But rather he's guilty or not, I don't personally see how he could be convicted of sex trafficking and RICO or racketeering, because to me, they have not proved it yet. So I just don't see how, to me, look, the way I see it is Diddy, I don't know how he is now, but was Diddy a bad person? Absolutely, yes. You know, he was definitely a bad person. He could have changed his ways. I don't know. I am a believer, so I believe you could change you could become Christian after turning your life over to God and change your ways and be transformed immediately, right? So I can't sit here and say, oh, Diddy haven't changed. I don't know. But was he a bad person? Yes, he was a bad person, you know? Again, I really hope he turned his life, you know, over to God, or have turned his life over to God. But he was a really bad dude at one point, you know? But at the end of the day, everything that I saw in regards to the charges, to me, looked like consent from the trial that I seen. Everything looked like consent. When it came down to sex trafficking, racketeering, RICO, when it came down to that, those things to me looked more like consent, right? And we got to remember, because we got to always understand we are feelings-based individuals. We don't focus on reality, logic. Just to go even further, especially women. Women are very feelings-based, feelings and emotional-based. Us men, we're more logical, you know, and live more in reality, right? If we don't see fact behind it, then, hey, it is what it is. So I'm saying that to say, we got to remember, Diddy was not on trial for domestic violence or abuse. We all know that he definitely is guilty of domestic violence and abuse. We've seen that. Clearly seen that. But he was not on trial for that. He was on trial for sex trafficking and racketeering, and the prosecutors did a horrible job of trying to prove that. A very horrible job. I want to just touch on an article really quick. But if am I lying though? Do y'all believe that the prosecutors did a good job? I really want to know in the chat what y'all think, because I didn't think they did a good job at all. You know, to me it seemed like more of a rush case. This was very rushed. You know, they wanted to once Cassie put out that lawsuit, it seemed like to me ever since that lawsuit was put out, they was rushing. They had saliva coming out of their mouth like, oh, shoot. This is a big fish. This is Diddy. We got to get him. You know, which at the end of the day, I don't blame him. There was a lot of bad things that were coming out that he did. And it looked like a open and shut case to them. But I don't think that they really did a good job of proving what they were trying to prove, right? So, okay, let's dig into this article really quick, right? So, Sean Diddy Combs found not guilty of racketeering and sex trafficking, but convicted of lesser charges. It's just what we discussed, right? So I just want to show you this really quick. So, Sean Diddy Combs trial, you got count 1, racketeering conspiracy. Count 2 is sex trafficking. Hold on. You know what? This is probably even a better one to show. Let me see. All right. So just to break it down, count 1, which was the racketeering, not guilty. Count 2, sex trafficking, not guilty. Count 3, this is the transportation to engage in prostitution. Count guilty, the lesser charge. And then the trafficking for the Jane Doe. This is not Cassie now. This is the Jane Doe, who I believe was 50 Cent's baby mother. Not guilty, but guilty of the lesser charge, was his transportation to engage in prostitution. All right. All right. So I'm just going to read a little bit of this because we chopping it up today. We talking. So, but I just want to just go into a little bit of it. So it says Sean Diddy Combs, the one-time global hip-hop titan whose federal trial unveiled harrowing testimony accusing him of sexual abuse against women and forced drug days freak-offs, was acquitted Wednesday of racketeering, conspiracy, and sex trafficking, but found guilty of lesser charges. The jury's verdict, delivered on the third day of deliberations, declared Combs, 55, not guilty of 1 count of racketeering conspiracy and 2 counts of sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, but guilty of 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. Later Wednesday, U.S. District Judge Aaron Subramanian denied Combs' bail request, saying it would be impossible for him to prove he does not pose a danger. The verdict is seen as a win for Combs and his defense team, which did not call a single witness during the 7-week trial. After it was read, his family stood up in the background, clapping and cheering. Combs fell to his knees in prayer, and fell to his knees in prayer. As he left the courtroom, he told his family, "Thank you, love you." That's a lot. And we're going to get to this fell to his knees in prayer part, because you see that's the picture I put up too. I'm actually going to play a video really quick too, just to let you all see from people who are inside the courtroom, let you all see how they would describe that entire scene, right? But this part right here stuck out to me during the trial. And this is, me personally, this is where I knew, oh, the bigger charges, he's not going to get proven guilty. It's no way he could get proven guilty. Because I already was thinking that when I heard Cassie on the stand and also 50 ex-baby mother. I think her name is like Daphne Joy or something like that. I forgot. That ain't the point though. But when I heard some of their testimonies, I was like, well, a lot of the things that they're saying, it sound like consent. It's all bad. Don't get me wrong. Like, I don't live that way. Most of the people that I know don't live that way. We also don't got Diddy money either, right? But I would never live that way. It's just not me. But it sounded like a lot of it was consent, and everyone, as long as they were getting something out of it, was cool with what was going on. Bad, but what's facts is facts, man. What you want me to say? I mean, I'm sure people want me to say, oh, you know what? Diddy should have got life. That dude, he's going to hell, and all of those type of things. I can't say that. That's what we have a court system for. And when it comes to the ladies, I got to just say this really quick. A lot of you love the court system when it's on your side. Because most of the time, the court goes against men for a lot. So if you want to trust in a court system when it comes down to things that benefit you, you got to trust in a court system when it's basically showing you something that you don't like as well. You may not agree with it, but you have to respect the law of the land. That's scripture right there. Respect the law of the land. And if 12 jurors went up in there and said not guilty for the bigger crimes, then it wasn't guilty. But it seemed like they were trying to be fair. To be honest, it seemed like the jurors were trying to be fair because if you really think about it, they could have said not guilty about the lesser charge as well. I'm just saying. Like, they could have easily said not guilty to sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. Because if you say not guilty to racketeering and sex trafficking, then you can also, there's a case where you can also say not guilty to sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. But it sounded like they was like, this is what we're working with. We don't really see those bigger charges, but I guess you could see the sex trafficking by force, fraud or coercion. We could see how that could be there. So it seemed like they were trying to be fair, but I want to, but what I want to do right quick is, let's see. I want to play a small video. It's about 8 minutes. I'm probably not even going to play the entire 8 minutes. But again, this is from a reporter who was in the courts and could give a little bit more of an explanation on what happened in the courts. Because there is something, too, that I want to talk about when it comes down to, what happened in the courts. 1 second. And also, too, like I always say, I appreciate you all patience. When you do this, when you do what I'm doing, there's you're doing 5, 6 things at one time. This is not for everybody. Trust me on that. That's why I tell a lot of people who say, man, I want to be on a podcast. I want to do a podcast. I say, look, connect with someone who's already doing it and build with them. Because it's a lot of work when you're trying to do your own on a podcast. It's a lot of work. But all right, here we go. All right, so again, I'm going to play just probably about 5, 6 minutes of it. I just want y'all to listen to what she had to say. Again, this is from a reporter who was near or in the courthouse and can explain everything that happened when the verdict was read, the reactions and everything in the court, right? And after we listen to it, we're going to come back and talk about it a little bit, So yeah. I want y'all to pay attention to a couple of things, though. Like the part where it talk about Diddy dropping to his knees. And it also going to him reading the Bible. I'm going to say this and we'll get to the video. I have to, hey, I gotta get my thoughts, right? But I always say people turn to God in their worst times, which is good because, to be transparent, around 12 years ago, I did the same. I never turned back. I may have battled and had up and downs, but I never turned away from God since I've been a Christian, right? But there's nothing wrong if you turn to God in your worst time. It happens, right? That's even scripture in the Bible. When Paul went through his worst moment, he then fully transitioned into becoming a Christian, and look who Paul became, right? But going back to what I was saying, the only thing that I ask in those moments are you truly turning your life over to God, to walk with Christ moving forward, totally letting your old self die to the world? Are you doing that? That's the question that I have. That's always my question. Because most people bow to God in sorrow, but they tend to forget about him tomorrow. Oh, wow, that was a bar. Oh, that was a bar. Man, that was good, man, Paul B. That was a good one. That was a good one. It came out, hey. Think about that. Most people bow to God in sorrow, but tend to forget about him tomorrow. Am I lying? So I'm curious about some of the things that I heard, and you guys are going to hear in this video when it come down to Diddy. But let's get to the video. Let's get to the video. Also, I'm going to mute myself. The last couple of times I played a video, I didn't forget to unmute myself. So I've been doing good, pat on the back, But I'm going to mute myself, so all you're going to hear is the video. And I'm not going to forget, but chat, if I forget to unmute it, get on me in the chat. All right? Let your boy know you are mute. I can't hear you, but I'm not going to forget. Let's get to it.
Hours. That is what we have seen since the jury began its deliberations. The family has held several group prayers inside of the courtroom. And this morning, as the jury began to deliberate again, because they were still hung on that first count, he led them in a prayer asking God to bless their hearts. He was praying for a not guilty verdict and for God to watch over his family. He then sat down at his seat and read Psalms 11. It was a printout of Psalms 11 as the court proceeding began. He never looked up. You could see he was meditating, really focused on what was going to come his way. They didn't know what this mixed verdict was this morning, and so his attorneys were very anxious this morning as they came into the courtroom, somber faces, not knowing what to expect and how long it might take to deliberate on count one where they were hung yesterday. So then when Judge Arun Subramanian came, he read the note. He said the note was returned at 9:52 a.m. saying that they had reached a verdict on all 5 counts. And then he brought the jury into the room to read their verdict one by one, count by count. The first verdict, racketeering conspiracy, not guilty. You saw him do a fist pump. And he was still looking down. He never looked up. He was still kind of meditating, anticipating all of the verdicts for each count. And so then they listed sex trafficking, Cassie Ventura. He nodded his head. Interstate prostitution for Cassie Ventura. Guilty. He was shocked. He was visibly affected when that one came. You could tell he was not ready for that to come, like a kinetic, like a real serious shock, because I think, once you start hearing the repetitive not guilty verdicts, there may have been an assumption that there was going to continue to be a not guilty verdict. So then after that, as they began to read the verdicts, he grabbed Teddy Garagos' hand. They were fist pumping. His attorneys complete 180. They couldn't even sit down waiting for the verdict to be read. They were nervous, and they were kind of spread out. It was almost like a security detail. One was positioned here, one was positioned here, one was positioned back there, and they were pacing back and forth, waiting for that verdict to be read. They were all seated when the verdict was read. They were all smiling. When Judge Arun Subramanian then pulled the juror to ask juror number 1, juror number 2, juror number 3, is this your verdict? Each one of them said yes, yes, yes. That is when we saw a moment when Sean Combs reached over to one of his lead attorneys, Teddy Garagos. He grabbed her, he kissed her on the cheek, beaming and smiling. During this time, he leaned back. He kept turning towards his family. I'm coming home. I'm coming home. It's going to be okay. And also, as they were polling the jury, you could see Sean Combs looking at them, trying to make eye contact with them with his hands. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you very much. That's kind of like a humility that he's shown throughout the trial, communications that he was actually admonished for during the trial for trying to make eye contact with the jury and connect with them. I don't believe any juror looked back at him. You could see a few of them kind of smiling, looking downwards, but I was focused on Sean Combs. He was about 10 feet to my left the entire trial, where he was seated at his defense table and the press row. And so he just kept thanking the jury. As the jury exited, he again was just thanking the jury, thanking the jury. And that is when we saw that dramatic moment. When the jury exited the courtroom, he dropped down to his knees. No one saw it coming. You looked over, he was on his knees, very prayerful, being very thankful for the verdict that was rendered, being acquitted of all of those charges. His family, as they have been known to do, when they get into this moment of prayer, they all bow their head. They were standing, they bowed their head. And then when he stood up, then there was loud cheers in the courtroom, loud cheers, a couple of outbursts of cheers. You saw him hugging his attorney, hugging Tini Garagos, Mark Agnifilo, his face beet red, group hugs. You know, he has 9 attorneys, so they were group hugging. You could hear them saying, "Dream team, dream team." I was in the elevator with Mark Agnifilo. I asked him, he said he's never felt like this in 34 years. I said, well, what does that feel like? He said, I am relieved that I'm not miserable. When the not guilty verdict, when he was acquitted of all those top charges, Judge Arun Subramanian said, government, is there anything from the government? The government said no. Then he asked Mark Agnifilo, is there something from the defense? He goes, absolutely. I believe this defendant, having been acquitted of the most serious charges, he should be returned to his family. He should be able to return to his home at 2 Star Island. He said that he treasures this opportunity and he would never run afoul of any opportunities should he be released on bail. Maureen Comey, the lead prosecutor for this case, stood up. She vigorously fought against the bail the same way she vigorously argued this entire case, saying, listen, these underlying circumstances still exist. You heard the testimony. You heard what these victims testified to in terms of the violence and the threats, and these are still mitigating factors and they still exist. At that point, Tini Garagos, you could see her going off. She was pointing her finger at Mark Agnifilo, just kind of like, you could just frustrated that there was still no, the government was still relentless in their prosecution of Sean Combs. Then the judge asked specific questions. What does this look like? If he is released on bail, Mark Agnifilo, what does that look like? Does he walk out of the front door today? He said, absolutely yes. I don't have a bail package prepared, a formal bail package, which is required in this situation, but off the cuff, we propose $1 million. We have 3 responsible family members who are here who can sign for the bail. We already have his passport. We rented out his plane. His plane is in Maui right now, so has no access to his personal plane. So he will never, he would not jeopardize any opportunity there would be should he be released on bail. And then Judge Subramanian asked Combs, I'm sure you don't want to go back to MDC. He comically shook his head, no, and he's been known to kind of react like that in trial. Laughter burst out in the courtroom. Obviously, there was levity, having been acquitted of the most serious counts. So he shook his head, no, like, I definitely don't want to go back there. And so only within an hour, both parties have to submit an official letter. Mark Agnifilo, what does that bail package look like? And do you have a person to execute this bail package? You have to meet with pretrial services before you can completely execute a bail package. And then the prosecution has to present case law. Under these circumstances, have we had a circumstance where you have a defendant who has still been convicted of 2 counts of interstate prostitution? Should they still be released on bond? So Comey again said this is off the cuff. We weren't expecting it, but we need to dig into the case law and we need to come back with a letter saying why we oppose it. Tosin, and this is no different than any of the fierce infighting we have seen throughout this trial. Neither side has been given an inch when it comes to the one single line of the wording that goes back to the jury responses, what text messages are in, what videos go in. They are fighting tooth and nail this entire trial. The jury has been paying attention this entire trial. They've been talking to each other even when they were told not to talk to each other about the trial. We saw them reacting to the testimony. So this is a culmination of 2 months, 8 weeks of long days of testimony, sometimes laborious testimony with federal agents just reading out text messages, going through the inventory of what was found at the searches of each of his homes, the LA home, the Miami home, and his mother has been in trial every day, in the courtroom every day. His sons come mostly every day. We did see his 3 daughters at the beginning of the trial, but when it began to get heavy with the testimony.
All right. So basically right there they just showing back to a little bit. They just showing Diddy's mother, who was basically leaving and I believe returning to the courtroom. That's just her right there, you know, with either family or assistants and everything. But yeah, that's what's going on, man. For everybody out there who thought you know, Diddy's about to serve a 20-year to life sentence, that's not happening. That's not happening. Now, one thing that I do want to add is the judge did come back and give his decision in regards to bail, because there were thoughts that maybe Diddy was going to get released today on bail. Well, he did not. The judge denied bail. Now, he's not finna get the type of years that people thought he was gonna get at first. That's not happening. Not for these type of charges. But he was denied bail. So Diddy is still in custody, and his team is still going to fight for that, which I'm going to say no more than a month. Diddy's going to be out on bail. Like, the type of charge that he was guilty on, it doesn't carry an extensive sentence. An extensive sentence. So, you know, while the judge figure out what type of time he's going to give him, which, to be honest, it may even be time served plus probation, you know, but while the judge figure that out, I believe he will eventually get bail. So we could see Diddy, you know, he was denied bail today, but we could see Diddy out of jail as early as next week sometime, you know. So it's crazy, man. It's crazy. You know, I bet a lot of this dude old friends, you know, old industry friends are shocked. You know, and they thinking about their next move because, you know, they all turned their back, you know, on Diddy, which is understandable. Very understandable. But these people move according to the world, man. So it's going to be interesting to see if people in the industry try to get back on his good side or not. That's going to be very interesting to see. But going back to the video, they mentioned that Diddy, while in court, was reading the Bible. And he was focused on reading Psalms 11, right? I want to touch on Psalms 11. Let's read that really quick. Psalms 11. Psalms 11 for the director of music of David. Again, this is what Diddy was reading in court. All right. Psalms 11 for the director of music of David says, "In the Lord I take refuge. How then can you say to me, flee like a bird to your mountain? For look, the wicked bend their bows. They set their arrows against the strings to shoot from the shadows at the upright in heart. When the foundations are being destroyed, what can the righteous do? The Lord is in his holy temple. The Lord is on his heavenly throne. He observes everyone on earth. His eyes examine them. The Lord examines the righteous, but the wicked, those who love violence, he hates with a passion. On the wicked, he will rain fiery coals and burning sulfur. A scorching wind will be their lot. For the Lord is righteous. He loves justice. The upright will see his face. Very interesting scripture that Diddy was reading with everything that he's facing. Now, it's beautiful that he's reading scripture, but yeah, very, very interesting for him to read, that in particular. You know what I'm saying? Look, at the end of the day, I believe that it's a beautiful thing that Diddy is in his word. Everyone should be in a word. The Bible is very, very important, right? So at the end of the day, I think that it's great, that he's in his Bible. But to be honest, the Bible is a template to life. I say this almost every live stream I do, but when it come down to Diddy, this is what I would say, is this for the cameras? Is this just for the moment? Is this because you are facing life? Or you really want to turn your life over to God if you haven't already? That's what I would ask. Are you following Romans 12:2, where it says, do not be conformed to the world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind? Are you following that? Is that where your heart and mind is at? That's what I hope when it comes to Diddy. That's what I really hope. Because these individuals like Diddy and others in the industry have influence, money, power, and so much more. So my hope is that they don't just turn, to God selfishly because they are going through trials and tribulations, but they fully submit to God, leaving their old self, their old life completely, and lead others to the faith, showing others how you fully are transforming your life and died to the old you and became the new through him. That's what I hope. But when you are so submerged into evil in the world, that's the hard part for people, because in some cases like Diddy, you have to give up everything to fully turn to God. Everything. Will he do that? I can never say never, but we have to wait and see when it comes to that part. You already know when it comes down to me, I be on a lot of these celebrities' heads, not in a negative way, but because I know they have influence. I done seen a lot of people turn away from me, because, I'll have something to say when it comes down to the Kendricks, to the Drakes, to the Tyreses, to the Games, to all of these individuals. Because I was once really in that world. I was once one of them. And when you're in that world, you understand the influence is at a whole nother level. So that's why I say so much and do so much and do so many videos, talking about certain things that are going on in the industry, right? Because I want to see that industry transform. It's too much evil in it, and it's hurting and killing a lot of these young men out here. I love these young men. I love them. I love them. That's why I fight for them. Whether they know it or not, some do, but some may not see that because of me going at the things that they like the way that I do. But the only thing that I'm doing is basically breathing Christ into them, into that world. hoping that they will do what Diddy is doing right now, getting on their knees and hopefully submitting to God. That's why. You know, but again, Diddy is found not guilty on the bigger charges and guilty on the smaller Man's Act charges that will probably get him released on bail soon, and maybe even time served in probation, you know. And that's that, you know. And also one of the reasons why the judge denied bail as well, I believe, is because of the victim statement. I believe Cassie's lawyer giving the courts her victim statement, basically saying she feels unsafe. You guys, you know, had her go in there and testify and do all of these things, and now he's about to just get released and be free. Like, I don't feel safe. That's the way she feel. You can't tell her how to feel, man. But I believe that's why he didn't get bail today. But eventually they're gonna have no choice but to give you know, Diddy bail. They're gonna have to. You know, you're charged with what you're charged with, man. You know, that's just what it is. So I had to show him that I wasn't made.